no different in working as an M&A advisor. And so things, your original kind of lead into that was, what are things an owner can expect? Generally, we spend a lot of time preparing that owner, making sure they know what they're looking for. Is it a partnership? Is it a retirement? Is it, succession planning that includes, opportunities for their team? Usually it's a combination of factors. It's not just, one of those by themselves. So really, getting clarity, helping them get clarity around, what their goals are, what their priorities are in 5 or 6 key areas. Second piece I would say is really understanding the value of their business. And the mistake we'll see owners make is, they may go work with a generalist or their accountant on a value, and not to beat up their accountants, but
no, go ahead, beat up accountants.
Well, unless you're looking at practice sales on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, it really is hard to know what the comps are, what's happening in the industry, and really diving into it and saying, okay, how do we quantify that leadership? How do we quantify that growth rate? How do we understand, each market's different. Some markets are more attractive than others because of their, net rev per visit. Looking at their benchmarks, their labor percentage, the rent percentage. There's a lot of value in working with someone in the industry. And I'll give other groups, to owners and say, hey, talk to us, talk to these other groups. We all do intro calls for free. And we'll help that owner kind of get a sense of, what value is added by working with somebody that works in the industry, but understanding your value and knowing that, hey, this aligns, so I can go have my conversation with, my financial advisor, with Eric's team, to say, hey, we've got this much in retirement accounts, here's what we're expecting in the value of the practice. Obviously, the accountant is a huge part of that. I'm not trying to throw them entirely under the bus on value, because looking at tax rates and understanding how is a transaction going to be taxed. That way an owner knows, hey, I'm going into this with fair expectations. And I typically am speaking in terms of probability of, we've got a high probability of being in this range on the final value. Once we know their goals, are there any groups that they're not interested in selling to, because in that market, that'd be a tough pitch to their staff, whatever it might be. But really, preparing them so that when they go to market, they've got opportunities to talk to, what I would consider to be qualified buyers that are not just a cultural fit, meaning can you go have a cup of coffee or a beer or whatever you do and say, hey, I like those people. But is it also a good strategic fit in that the practice is going to be stronger going forward? It's going to be a better employer of choice. It's going to be a better provider of choice going forward, and not take a step backwards because of that partnership.
I love that.
So a lot of prep that goes into it. The deal itself, it's like any negotiation. When you add competition to it, and we just call it a competitive process. But when we're putting an owner, a practice out to multiple groups at the same time, you just end up with better offers, higher multiples, better deal terms. We see that all the time. That once we enter the picture, and once we bring in multiple buyers, and the right buyers, you want to make sure that they're groups that are well financed, that align, where they're going to be able to look at this and say, hey, we can really do a lot with this practice. And so we spend a lot of time, really getting an owner in front of the right buyers. And so all of that really is what a good advisor should do. It should be an investment. They should be paying for themselves and making your life easier. And, after their fees, you're taking home more money than if you were doing this transaction on your own.
No doubt about that.
And then there's the diligence prep. We have we're fortunate in that our team includes Robbie Leonard. Robbie's a PT who's also a certified healthcare compliance specialist. So by the time we've gotten someone to a place that they're going out to market, there's just no surprises. sometimes we'll see owners miscalculate their EBITDA, miscalculate an add back. They'll leave their salary out of the expense line. They might go to market at 2 months earlier than they should because of their past collections, or they go to market and they don't understand the AR or working capital, and and in the letter of intent they'll sign it, and then they'll call someone like me and they'll say, hey, signed a deal, or we've got a deal in front of me, but is this a fair deal? And then you start to go down the list of, well, it's not just price, it's is what are they buying? Is it the AR? How is the working capital being calculated? Which should be more standardized than it is, but we see significant variance in how buyers calculate working capital. So you need to clarify that. What are the terms of the deal? Is it, is there going to be a note? Is that note at risk, or is it just, a straightforward note? Are there any earn-out provisions? What's your likelihood of hitting them if they are? What's the owner's compensation going to be, and what's their commitment going to be, to the practice afterwards? And then equity is a big part of these deals, as I'm sure you know. I mean, we've discussed this on past owners, really understanding, how is that equity being calculated? And a lot of past owners out there walking around, that have equity, but if you ask them, well, what's that based off of? What's the value of the company? Really don't understand, how that equity was valued. And so those are all areas. It's not, usually we're helping owners negotiate better terms in all of those, not just in price, but we're making sure that, we're optimizing the terms, the working capital, that they understand, the equity calculation, they understand their responsibilities post-transaction. Yep. And you're right, it's a lot to do the first time, and stakes are pretty high. And, if we didn't help owners, get more value out of their deals, we frankly wouldn't do what we do.
There you go.